every conversation, not every debate, not every evangelistic endeavor requires an information dump. Instead, might I suggest that on occasion we use the power of, not cheese, a powerfully placed question. That's right, Christian. When you and I discuss moral issues, hopefully leading to an evangelistic encounter, because what's the point in persuading somebody about a moral issue if they still end up going to hell? Maybe, just maybe, you and I do not need to blast them with all of our brilliantly stored apologetic information. Permit me to share with you a demonstration of the power of a well-placed question. Hey, young man, how are you?
I'm well. I'm from Minnesota.
Is that right?
Yes.
Well, thanks for answering that without me. You love Minnesota. Well, I got to... Somebody missed rehearsal. Yeah, exactly. So you like Minnesota is what I'm getting.
It's great. The
Georgia's
weather,
better.
snow.
Georgia's,
no, of course
not.
No, you don't get
seriously.
Snow in Georgia.
Georgia, look, I compared the temperature charts, and Georgia persistently has a temperature
but
more
it's
moderate. In the winter time, you can actually go out sometimes in a pair of shorts and sandals sometimes. Sometimes you even get a little bit of color so you don't look all pasty. I'm not suggesting anything. And the tax rate in Minnesota, and you've got that Al Franken up there in the state of Minnesota. And Mark Dayton is your governor. You've got to be kidding me.
What's about Minnesota?
Wow, almost gave myself an aneurysm. Let's try now. Take two. Hi, young man.
Hi, I'm from Minnesota.
I heard. So tell me, living in Minnesota, the mosquitoes, how do you deal with that?
You don't. You just embrace them.
And you
it's
get
bad.
Do they
you
scratch
give a pint of blood every time you walk outside.
But I wonder, the itch, because sometimes some bugs bite you and it doesn't really last very long. What about the
it's
sting?
Horrible. It is horrible.
Yeah. Do you ever find that it's dangerous in Minnesota driving in the wintertime?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've gone off the road before.
Yeah, I'll bet you have. And what about the rust from all of the sand and the salt on your cars?
That's one thing I noticed coming to Georgia, a lot more nicer cars because of the rust.
Which is probably now why you're persuaded to love Georgia more than me. Okay, you kind of get the point, don't you? That maybe we don't have to go bang, bang, pow, and give them everything we've got. Instead, we can pull out some information which perhaps helps them to see their own position from a different light. Case in point, I don't know if you've heard, we just did a TV show called Life is Best, actually funded by you, and one of the episodes is about this very issue. When it comes to the life debate, it can become very contentious very quickly. Maybe, just maybe, what the doctor ordered for you the next time you go toe-to-toe is to consider not just ding, but instead the power of a well-placed question.
Speaking the truth in love. You're called to be a pro-life ambassador, not a pro-life jerk. And in a postmodern culture where you can get hammered to the wall for claiming you're right, a tactic that can help you persuade is to simply ask a good question.
One of the biggest mistakes that we make is that when somebody challenges our views, we feel immediately pressured to respond and to explain what we believe. That's the exact opposite of what we ought to do. What we ought to do is to ask tactical questions. Greg Koukl gives us a list of tactical questions. We need to put the burden back on the person who's made the claim. It's their responsibility to defend their views. So if someone says something to me like, women have a right to choose, I shouldn't immediately feel like I have to defend the pro-life position. What I need to do is ask those tactical questions. What do you mean by that? Choose what and under what circumstances? The second question is, how did you come to that conclusion? How did you come to believe such a thing? And then finally, have you considered the implications for your view? Have you considered the consequences if what you say are true? By putting the burden on them, I give them the opportunity to hear themselves explain their view, and oftentimes they hear the mistakes they're making as they think those things through. And then, only after they have defended their view, and only after they've explained their view, do I explain mine. This gives us the best opportunity to have a productive, low-emotion conversation, and gives us the best opportunity to change people's minds. By working ourselves through a conversation tactically, putting the burden on the person who's made the claims, and never feeling like I have to rush through the conversation and quickly get to my own position and defend what I believe.
Have you ever felt like you're on the hot seat? You're getting grilled for your Christian beliefs and you don't know, how am I going to give an answer that's going to persuade this person I'm talking to? You don't have to have a PhD in philosophy or apologetics to give something that's worth thinking about. What you need to know how to do is ask a couple of good questions. And my colleague Greg Kokel calls these Columbo questions, named after the detective, the TV detective, Columbo. Columbo was the famous TV detective who every time he would go to solve a crime would ask 3 basic questions to determine who done it when it came to a crime. And these 3 questions, says Greg Kokel, will get you off the hot seat. Here are the questions you need to become adept at asking that will help you keep your cool under fire. You don't have to have a perfect answer, just ask a good question. Here they are. Number 1, what do you mean by that? Number 2, how did you come to that conclusion? And number 3, have you considered the implications of your view? Say somebody calls you a name. You're just a religious political extremist because you oppose abortion. You're anti-choice. Don't panic. Don't get angry. Very graciously look at the person and say the following. What do you mean by an extremist? They'll probably say something like, well, somebody who thinks they're right. Do you think you're right? Well, yes. So if I understand you correctly, if I claim to be right, I'm an extremist. But if you claim to be right, you're just right. And as Greg Kokel points out, simply asking, what do you mean by that, can often clear the air. The second question, how did you come to that conclusion, is crucial, because now the person has to provide evidence for what they just said. If somebody says to you, for example, that the unborn are not human because they're not self-aware, my first question is, how did you come to that conclusion? Why does self-awareness matter in the first place? And then the third one, have you considered the implication of your view? If self-awareness, for example, is what gives us value, newborns fail because they're not self-aware until several weeks after birth. So by simply asking a series of a few questions, what do you mean by that? How did you come to that conclusion? And have you considered the implications of your view? You can turn the tables and put the burden of proof back on the person who's making the claim.
Let me know when that gets up your nose. We've been telling you life is best is amazing. If you would like to learn more, you can visit lifeisbest.tv.